Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians and lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host, broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly of the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Our sponsor today is EliteGuardianMN.com. If you're looking for your next concealed carry course in home defense, you can get your Minnesota permit to carry from this course. Go to EliteGuardianMN.com. I've got it right here. Let's put it right on the screen. EliteGuardianMN.com. It's a prepper company. Also brought to you by Alpine Cabinetry in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Before I introduce my guest today, for those that aren't familiar with our program, if you're watching on Rumble and you want to interrupt me at any time, just hit that Rumble rant button. We go live to your comment. I will try to get through some comments here, but you know how it goes. I really am very interested in this interview, and so if I'm just studying the live comment section, it's like, oh man, I'm missing the actual essence of the interview. Most of our audience watches after the fact. If you want to become a premium insider and get access to our post show, which I got a really good one for you guys today. It possibly will be a show. It's about some corruption inside the Republican Party. Make sure you go to truthhurtsnews.com. Otherwise, you can also go on Rumble and click on Join Us. We'll be live in the post show after we're done with our guest today, who is Mike Newcome, a candidate for governor, just received the endorsement from the Ford Party. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for allowing me to meet your audience.
Well, there are people in my audience that actually want to meet you, and
All right.
I saw you also comment on one of my Facebook threads, and I was like, in fact, I didn't really agree with the weight that you put on that issue. I think you were talking about like financial disclosures, which is not something I'm in favor of, but I was just like, I don't think
I
that
think you
solves
missed.
this issue.
No, you missed my point. That wasn't about financial disclosures. It was if we put as much emphasis on the Epstein as making politicians on the Democrat and Republican show where all their money's coming from, we might actually
Oh,
solve something. That was my point.
I thought you're like, "Ooh, we need a website that shows." I'm like, those exist and people don't even go to it. Well,
No,
that's true, and I think we should make it a law where politicians have to wear like NASCAR jackets, and it
I'm with
shows
you.
who they're sponsored by.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you because people is like, that's why my insurance rates are so expensive. Ah.
Yeah, yeah. And what happens with the people that were sponsored by Jeffrey Epstein? Should they have to put that on the jacket too?
Well, I'm going to tell you I know of one person who was never on that airplane and never on that island, and you're looking at him.
Yeah, I always think that same thing. It's like, well, you'll never find me flying the Lido Expressway. But then again, it's easy for guys like you and me to say that because we weren't the rich and powerful. That was obviously his mark.
Yeah.
If you guys want more information, I had Dave Benner on the show on Tuesday. It's so interesting to go into that. Dave's kind of an expert on the Epstein files and all the revelations. I didn't bring you on here to talk about Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
I don't know what role you would have as governor of Minnesota for that. You're running for governor of Minnesota. You've already sought and received the endorsement of the Ford Party. Tell people who you are.
So, first and foremost, I'm a Minnesotan. I'm a born and bred Minnesotan. I grew up in White Bear Lake. By the way, go Bears. I had graduated from White Bear High School, although 3/4 of my high school life were at Hill Murray. I just probably wasn't the best student, and so I wasn't invited to leave, but it was probably the better choice to transfer over to White Bear. Um, Graduated from White Bear, ended up at St. Thomas. Graduated from St. Thomas with a political science degree because I always thought I would end up going into law, not politics, law. And that was the precursor for that. But my dad informed me that because my grades were what they were, that I'd probably have a better opportunity getting involved in sales, which did turn out to be the right answer because my first job I ever took in Minnesota was with a really small, nothing startup. And that really parlayed itself into my entire professional career, all the way up until the time I started my own business called Details Home Services, which to this day is still the largest home service cleaning business in the Twin Cities that no one's heard of because it's such a fragmented industry. There's no Walmarts and no Targets. And that's why I went into that space. But that's who I am in general. I'm a Minnesotan. I'm a business person. I've been here my entire life, and I'm concerned about what's going on in the state, and that's why I've jumped into this race.
One fascinating thing about you, that I learned just texting you before we got on the show was your dad was a World War II vet. You're
Yeah.
56 years old. I mean, it's just dumbfounding to me because, yeah, you're a little older than me, but it's like that was my late grandfather who was in World War II. Like, how old was your dad when he had you? It's insane to think about that.
47 going on 48. My mom was 39 years old, and I think I joked with you that I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and my closest sibling is 8 years older than me. And my brother, who's my closest sibling, would always say that I'm the illegitimate child of my oldest sister, who happens to be about 17 years older than me. But my mom showed me all the proof, and so I am definitely the son of my mother.
Gotcha. All right, let's. I guess when we get into politics, I
Yep.
threw you such a softball there. Well, tell me about your dad.
Hey, thank
Um,
you, by the way. Listen, this is my first foray into the rough world of politics. So yeah, I was hoping for softball questions, and my favorite color is purple.
well, truth be known, so most of our audience is like me, very much on the liberty wing of Republican circles, if you will,
That's
but
okay.
not beholden to a party. Okay, like the idea that the party comes first. I don't play blue team, red team. I criticize Republicans almost more on this show just because I see a lot of them as frauds. They say one thing, they do the exact opposite. Okay, there's not much hope I have in the Democrat Party. I don't see any hope there. Okay, and Tim Walz is terrible. His record's bad, and we'll get into that. But I think a lot of people are open minded on this thing because they see the Republican field. They're not very happy with it, and we've voiced our opinion on this show. Um, I've kind of come to the realization that that's probably going to be close to the field. This magic candidate that I was hoping coming from the business world, that's not in politics, presentable to both greater Minnesota and the suburbs. He didn't show up in the Republican Party, just
Oh,
FYI.
I thought you were gonna say you're talking about me.
Well, that's what's interesting, and I'll probably end this on asking why you didn't go that way. But
Yeah.
um, and so it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll start asking some of these people to come on the show, these Republicans, even the ones I've criticized, and it's actually interesting. They're dodging, you know, because I think, and honestly, they're dodging a pretty good audience here of like hardcore activists and delegates, people that go and become delegates of the Republican Party. So I think they dodge it at their own, you know, harm. But I think it opens up this ability for people to make a case. We had Brad Kohler, who is actually running for the Republican nomination a couple weeks ago. Um, and so it was
And I
suggested to me
talked
to
with
bring you
him.
in.
I
Well, he's a
talked
nice
with him.
gentleman. He's a very nice guy.
He actually reached out to me. I had no idea who he was. We had the most cordial conversation because I'm a firm believer is there's no competition when what you're selling's the best. So I
Yeah.
said, I'm more than happy to talk with you. And he seemed like a really nice guy, and I look forward to having other conversations with him.
Rad Trad says finally a non-boomer.
But I'm almost there. I'm right at the tail end. I'm sorry. I
I
just
didn't
look.
even think of that. But well, listen, we've criticized the plethora of politicians that have fainted on camera, right?
Shit, I'm in
Including
good shape.
including a president that literally was like on life support, and the whole party that didn't want to admit to that. Razzle
Yeah.
Dazzle says Christian constitutional conservatives, and I think that's very much true. Um, O'Bannon is asking, is Wilson still dodging? Yeah, I haven't got a call back from Ryan Wilson. Make your case, Ryan Wilson. Come on the show. Tell us why Lisa Damuth is the best one. But anyhow, I don't want to go down that road because you're
Yeah.
here and I am open-minded on it. You do seem to fit the criteria of all those things I just said, and I'm not the only one. A lot of people, they want that businessman, the outsider. They want the person that's not, in the swamp currently, which is actually comes with a little problem because you don't have a constituency in politics, so it's hard to do.
Correct.
And then I think most of all, they want someone that's presentable that can win those votes in greater Minnesota, but also in the suburbs. You actually live in the suburbs. I hate to admit it, we are, right? You're in Lake Elmo. You're in the same city, town. What do we call
Yeah.
it? It's we're a
But I
city.
used to
I don't
I
know,
used
Tom.
to live up in Deerwood, so we used to
Okay, there you
call
go.
they call the people in the city idiots.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you on that one, right? Um, what do you think this let me ask you this. In the voter's mind, and we're less than a year at this point. We'll just say 12 months out from when voters will go to the polls and decide who they're going to vote for. What do you think is going to be top of their mind here in Minnesota?
Well, top of their mind, if hopefully they have a memory, it's going to be the fraud and corruption that's been perpetrated on the Minnesota taxpayers. That will be number one, top of mind. Number two, I think we could have some more bumps in our economy, and I think people are going to really be wondering, are we heading in the right direction? We already know we're not in the state, because last report that just came out said that we've had less than a 1% GDP growth since 2019. I mean, this is Minnesota, and
Right.
now we're Mississippi. Sorry, Mississippi.
So I find it hard to believe that, let's just take someone from Lake Elmo, a couple that goes to the polls in Lake Elmo in a year from now. They're going to go there and they're going to go, I'm really sick of this fraud. I mean, for sure, everyone is sick of this fraud. When they're staring at, and you know this well, and I'm using Lake Elmo as an example because it was just this week our property tax bill came to
Oh,
us.
I
Okay, you
should have
see what I'm
mentioned that.
saying?
Listen. I'm sorry. You go ahead. Yeah,
Well, it's just like that is 100% what people are going to be voting on is how unaffordable life is, and it's everything from property taxes,
but
the city of Lake Elmo, the grocery store, the gas station, children's sports, clothing, if you got a kid in college, healthcare, right? All these
oh,
things going up in price.
so listen. Everything though falls below the fraud, and here's why. Until we actually have a real idea what it costs to operate this state, we can't address tax relief for the taxpayers. And what I mean is, until we know, we could have $10 billion in fraud. I mean, at one point, remember, we had an $18 billion surplus. So to me, well, we were operating the state way too fat and we could have reduced taxes. But right now, we don't know where we're at with this state. And I use this in business. It's, after the first year of starting a business, I said, all right, here's how much it's going to cost to operate the business, and here's how much I'm bringing in the front door. But those
Mhm,
were real numbers. Right
mhm.
now, we have no idea what it costs to operate the state. And we know what we're bringing in the front door, but does it cost this much to operate the state once we realize that we're wasting $1 billion, $2 billion in fraudulent charges or just pure waste or inefficiency? So, yes, I would address taxes immediately, but you can't walk in and go, I'm going to lower taxes. And listen, they're going to run on that, and they can't, because they realize they have to understand what the budget's telling them before they can go in and start making promises.
Okay, so and on the phone call, I didn't even cover this subject, so I'm throwing you
Go
kind of
ahead.
here in the
Yeah,
hot
no worries.
chair. And you're, I think, fairly new to the political scene, so maybe you just don't know. But how aware of like the Minnesota budget are you? Like how it operates? Obviously, in the private sector, you're pretty aware, running companies. But it's like, do you understand like maybe going back the last 6 years or so, how the budget has gone up and what levels we're at?
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, I'm at like any Minnesotan that stays a little bit plugged in, understands that we not only did we spend a $18 billion surplus, but we added $10 billion in taxes that we blew
Okay.
through, like two drunk sailors on shore leave. So I'm well attuned to
Okay. So
where we're at with
okay,
that.
good.
And
All
then
right,
when you
good.
want to
So
talk about budget items, I mean, again, being well attuned, people want to focus on SNAP. By the way, that's a federal. There's two budget items we need to address in Minnesota. It's Health and Human Services, or DHS, and Department of Public Education. There's some other hefty ones down below there, but you got to go for where the problems are and where the waste is first, and it's those two categories.
okay, and no one disagrees with you on this.
Okay.
At least not publicly, I guess. Um, this is why I'm asking this question. The budget, back about COVID era was about $50 billion. The Democrats then increased the budget within so they got a trifecta in 2000 and
2023,
right. So they actually grew the government by 36%, the general funds budget.
64
Um
billion.
I think it was like 70 billion. It's actually over. It's 66 billion in this current biennium, which went
Yeah.
down from that 70 billion. So when you say this $18 billion surplus, actually was more than that, but that $18 billion surplus, that's what they did. They spin it all on this new government. And when you run the numbers, you realize that actually is still there. It's just, do we still want this bloated government that happened under the Democrats and then got locked in by the Uniparty in some regards, because they both ended up agreeing to a 660 66 well, $66.6 billion biennium budget. 666, shocking.
Yeah.
So this surplus actually exists. It has to shrink back to before it ballooned up by 36% in 2 years, which anyone seems like if you just said, "Hey, my radical proposal is to go back to spending levels of 2022," I think people would be like, "Seems normal, right? It seems like a reasonable thing to do." Well, that would actually free up $20 billion, and when you do the math, that's like $8,000 back in the pockets of taxpayers if you just distribute it evenly, right?
So,
I don't even
yeah.
care how we distribute it, as long as it goes back to the hands of the people.
Well, so yeah, ask the question though, where did the money go? In what it if we had gold paved roads and our public schools were hitting home runs all day, I'd be like, wow, 18 billion, well spent. I want to know where it went and what benefit did it give the taxpayers. I mean, so everyone is willing to pay taxes for safe communities, for good roads and good public schools. I always said there used to be this handshake agreement between the taxpayers and our government in Minnesota. Minnesotans were always willing to pay a little bit more in taxes for great schools, safe cities, and good roads. And they're not delivering any of that anymore. And that's both Democrats and Republicans. So, yes, our current governor's been in office for 8 years and is looking for an unprecedented third term. But both of these parties over the last 30 years, this is the result of their politics, not just in recent, you can talk about the wasted money, but we're here because of the system.
Yeah, but so when you say like we got to go after the fraud, which once again no one disagrees with, and you're
Yeah.
talking maybe in the ballpark of two
Well, hang
billion
on.
dollars.
They don't just disagree, Jake. I want to make something clear. What you're hearing from these guys is, "Oh boy, we need to look into that, and we'll get to the bottom of that." But the
Right,
deeper,
right.
why haven't they done it? Why
I
hasn't the
know,
legislature been on this for a
I know.
thousand years? And here's why. Here's why. Because both the constituencies of both of these parties have their hands in our back pocket. So maybe we
Right.
don't want to find all the fraud.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, both parties are okaying the budget bills,
Of
these
course.
1,000-page omnibus bills that literally no one reads, that even uh, appropriates that money to those programs.
Yeah.
But once again, it's like we can solve this problem.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, the budget comes out from the legislature, but the governor kind of leads the budget cycle by showing his proposal in
Questioning it. Yeah.
January. And we can lead this by just saying, no, this government is going to shrink back to what it was in 2020 or 2022, just COVID level spending.
Yeah.
And then we give that money right back to you because, listen, I understand you're suffering out there. I understand your property taxes are going up. I understand city taxes are going up. I understand the grocery store bill. I understand all this kind of stuff. That's something that we could do right now, and I don't see a candidate addressing that. And certainly, I think a lot of these Republicans, and certainly Tim Walz, who have a record and didn't do this, really have nothing to stand on. Even if they come up with that proposal, it's like, really? Oh, now you're doing it, right? Is
Who
that
was the
something you
last?
would?
Yeah, who's the last person that wrote a check back to Minnesotans from over being overcharged? Who's the last governor in Minnesota to send a check back to the people?
I mean, I know you're
Jesse
probably going to.
Ventura, the
I know you're going to
independent.
Jesse. Technically, about $260 did go back under Walz, right?
Oh
Right?
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It really helped. It really, I mean, when you know it's $8,000 that we've been overcharged, and to get this
Yeah.
miserable $260, like, oh, thanks a lot, right? You're really confiscating our money. So, is this something that you would be interested in doing and leading on as a candidate?
Yeah,
Because I
and
think you need to find that issue that's going to really like get to the heart of the people, but also it's going to be like the parties have failed you on this thing. These candidates have failed you on it.
well, listen, they've absolutely failed us, so I don't even have to go about that. And to answer your question, the answer is yes, but it can't be done with a bazooka. It has to be done properly. And here's why I say this. I had someone reach out to me who happened to be an old high school friend, and she said, "Mike, I see you're running for governor. Um, are you going to go in and fire everyone in state agencies? And I was like taken aback. And I said, number one, that's not going to solve anything because that's not where the budget problem's at. I said, absolutely not. I said, but could we shrink the overall footprint of government through simply attrition once we realize that certain positions are no longer necessary? I said, absolutely, I'd look into that. So I would take a much different approach. What you're going to hear from the Republicans is a lot of promises because they want your constituencies. They're going to come out and they're going to say, we're going to lower taxes and license tabs are going to go down and this is going to go down. They're not going to accomplish any of that because the Democrats will block them at every single thing. Where I'm saying is, if you can take and be an honest broker and an honest broker of the facts to say, Minnesotans, here's where we're at right now. We had a budget over here at one point in time, and now we're way over here. We don't even need to reduce the services that we're offering to you if we can just get our hands around how much we're spending and the waste that's in them, the administrative cost. So I would take a different approach than the Republicans who are going to promise you guys the world. They're going to save you. And then versus the Democrats who are going to scare everyone and say, oh, they're going to come in and all state employees are going to get fired. And you're going to lose if you have a special needs child. The Republicans are going to come out and take that money away from you. My approach is way different. We can get it done and we can do it with common sense.
Okay, I did see a question in here about viability, and we
I
had
love it.
talked a little bit about this on the
Yeah.
phone. So I think a lot of people realize, yes, Jesse Ventura was successful as a third party candidate. But what allows you to believe? I mean, you're not a former pro wrestler, movie star.
No, I think I got beat up by one though once.
Interesting story.
Yeah. I got a lot of good
Uh,
stories.
what makes you viable?
Here's what makes me viable because our message is definitely going to resonate with Minnesotans. But and I'll agree with whoever asked that question. Right now, my viability to the voters is 1% because of no one knows me. Last week, it was 0.5%. And in 4 weeks, we've been able to create some traction. And I'm on your show right now, and I'm talking to your listeners. So the viability will come is when people give me a chance, look at my positions, understand who I am, where I've come from, and what I want to do for Minnesota. But listen, this is a moonshot. I get it. But I fully intend to go to the moon. And I'm not just in this for some vanity project or to make myself feel good. We are suffering in Minnesota. I believe I'm the answer. Excuse me. I believe my message is the answer. And I believe my common sense approach is the answer. I'm the vehicle that's going to carry it to the people because I can articulate it and I am well versed on most issues and I'm still learning a lot. And I look for the people on the right hand side of this screen. They're going to be involved in decision making and processes, not the parties, because both these Democrats and Republicans, they all will promise you everything. Then they'll get in their
Right.
room and they'll say, all right, I know you promised this, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in my audience that believes the parties have let us down tremendously. And I think we're just at the point where it's like, that's a lot of talk. Let's get some action. Let's solve some of these problems. Let's talk about the issues. And this is something we didn't cover over the phone. First of all, well, actually, we did cover this. Your thoughts on what went down in Minnesota during COVID? I mean, that to me is what pisses me off the most about Tim Walz is how he treated our government and took these powers amongst himself to shut down our businesses. Where do you stand on all those things, including mandates on vaccines and masks?
Yeah. So when we did have this conversation, and I'm happy to speak about this, and I'm actually happy to speak about this with the people because this is one thing that scared the living daylights out of me is what happened. The extreme overreach of our government taking away individual freedoms and rights. And what blew me away was that we had a hotline that was set up to call on your neighbors. And I equated this, and I equated this to I always wondered how a government could convince an entire population to move against a certain segment of their population. I now fully understand how things might have transpired during World War II. When you create fear and uncertainty in us against them. And that's what I felt during COVID. And I would have done things completely different. I agreed with the original Let's have a week pause. Let's figure this thing out. Is this the pandemic that every movie's been about, where it's going to wipe out billions of people? If it was, I agreed with the governor and I agreed with the president at the time. We're going to take a pause. We're going to keep kids home from school. We're going to keep you home from work because it could kill millions and billions of people.
And we're gonna
But
let the hospitals get prepared, right? That was
yeah,
actually what was initially sold
well,
to us. No
yeah,
one disagreed with that.
no, and everyone agreed with that. And then all of a sudden, it was going to be a week, and then it's 2 weeks, and then they're mandating masks, and then everyone's getting a vaccine. I equated it to every time a toll booth got put up on a bridge, they say it's only going to stay up until the bridge is paid for. You have never seen a toll booth removed from a road or a bridge. So
Mhm.
that's what I felt happened during COVID is. And then it was like all these people were drunk with power. And instead of reassuring Minnesotans and being a calming person and saying, we're in these trying times, and the science on masks isn't 100% there, but if you feel that you want to wear a mask, please wear a mask. But if you feel it's not going to help you and not, it's okay. We shouldn't have been forcing people to do stuff once we recognized, but it was black and white. And I wondered where the ACLU was. I wondered where all these freedom of speech people were. I wondered where every left leaning organization at the time. I was crying out, going, where are you guys? So no, I would have
Right.
done it differently. But Jake, in the beginning, I agreed with the position, and then it just went way off the rails.
Do you, okay, so I don't know how familiar you are with Action for Liberty and the Never Again bill.
I'm
Are you familiar with that
Yeah,
at all?
is that yes? Talking about we need, instead of the governor being able to mandate, we need legislators to be involved in that process.
Well, yeah, essentially, it takes the power away from the governor. He can't unilaterally declare emergency powers. The legislature has to opine, and it's ridiculous to think that they can't, like in modern day, right? They
Yeah,
virtually vote, like the idea that you can't. And then if there is an emergency declared by the legislature, the governor's powers are very limited, and he certainly can't take your ability to go to work or firearms restrictions or anything like that. So there's a Bill of Rights in it. Um, would you sign the Never Again pledge
so
to pass
first
that bill?
Yeah. So first, I don't know everything that's in there. I'm going to answer your question, but I don't know everything that's inside that bill, so I can't speak to it. But here's what I will tell you. I don't think that power should rest in the governor's hands. If it was me, I believe we elect public officials, legislators and senators. Those are the voices of the peoples within their district. And if it's during a crisis and I'm a true leader and we need to have certain types of executive powers, I would go to the legislature, I would plead my case, they'd go to their people, we'd come back, and we go from there. So, not knowing everything about that bill, and I'm just going to say what I would
I'll
support is
send it to you, by the way.
legislative involvement. Yeah,
Yeah.
please do. I would support legislative involvement in a huge decision like that because, again, we don't listen. We hear a lot about no kings, no kings, no kings. Governor's not a king. I would go back to the legislature and say, let's get this figured out. So let me look at it. You hear what I'm saying. So I'm leaning more. I would agree with it unless there's
Well,
some crazy thing in there.
well, this is exactly my thought, and I think I wrote something about this probably pretty early on, like March 2020. And it's like Governor Walz thinks that leadership is like some kind of tyrannical fiat, and it's like that's not true leadership. Those of us, well, I mean, he was in the military, so he should have known that, but you know how his military career ended, not very good. Not a not a sign of a good leader, a guy that abandons his troops. But also business leaders, like that is not the way. You don't inspire the people that you're trying to lead by creating some kind of executive fiat. And that's all he did.
No,
It was executive order telling you what you can and can't do. It's
no,
not leadership.
no. Leadership is showing that someone's in charge and that you're speaking to all of your constituents. We wiped out businesses and we put people in so much fear and we pitted our own citizens against each other. I would have done a completely 100% difference. And by the way, we'd have had the same results without all the hate on both sides because that's carried over to right where we are today. If you see someone wearing a mask now, you automatically think, "Oh boy." But guess what? They could be the most hardcore conservative, but they have
Nah,
pre they
not
have
really.
pre they have pre-existing conditions. So
Well,
during
that's
COVID,
true.
I
I
was up.
do I do I do sometimes wonder. I see some people, I go, there could be a legit medical reason, and it's not really COVID that they're doing that for. Because you gotta remember the Japanese were wearing masks, anyone that's traveled and
Yeah, for
sees
years.
Japanese
So have the
people. Yeah,
Chinese.
right, right. Well, you don't see the Chinese, traveling as much as Japanese, but yeah, it's something big in the Asian culture.
So, Jake, what really that during COVID, my mother was alive. She was 91. She was
Oh,
in,
wow.
yeah, she was 91. She was in perfect health. And I'll tell you, from what she saw on the news and from our leaders, she was petrified. She was afraid, and it completely changed who she was and how she saw the world. She wouldn't allow me into the home. And I blame, and this wasn't just Governor Walz. I also blame other people for inflaming and throwing all this up instead of being calming figures that wouldn't you expect your leaders. Listen, you're a military guy. When you guys walked into battle, if the guy at the head at the tip of the spear started screaming and going crazy, I mean, what would that do to the guys behind him? It wouldn't
Yeah, it
bode a
doesn't
lot of
instill a lot of
confidence.
yeah, not no confidence in your
And to me,
leadership.
that's what happened was we didn't have a succinct message. You asked me about the shot, and I listen. That companies required, mandated, you will be fired if you don't take this shot. Once again, to me was the greatest overreach because they could do it because the government, the both the federal and the state government said you could do that. I said and I owned a business before COVID. If I did that, I would never have said that to my employees, and I would have never mandated anybody to do anything because if they wanted to get that shot, then go get that shot. And I would have said, hey, you go get the shot. And if they said, Mike, I'm not going to get the shot, I'd say, this is America. No
Yeah,
one should force you to do anything. The argument is it's for the better good and we're all together. Well, give me the right
which
facts.
were lies, right?
Yeah,
Which at this point
of
we know are
course.
lies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or it has a 95% efficacy. It has an 85. It has a 65. Now it's a 5% efficacy. I can't even say the word efficacy rate. So
that's a
yeah,
hard one for us in Minnesota.
so when there's certain things, and the argument was this was a potential, nightmare. We need to do what's right for everybody. I think the first thing would have been to actually show leadership and bring people together and not divide us. That would have
Right.
been leadership.
Well, and I'm so glad you say that because this is what really still irks me about COVID, and I feel like it's leaving the minds of a lot of people and how they
Scary.
vote. Not this audience, by the way. They're very attuned to solving this issue. Never again, Bill, being one of those things. But it's just like this was a time for us to come together. We all remember 9/11, and
Mm,
New York City is not like this unified city, but it was at that point.
yeah.
Say what you will about Rudy Giuliani these days, he was a good leader in that time and for that city, and he's not the only one. There was lots of people that stepped up. There was something good and pure about that, okay?
Yeah.
That's not
Flags.
what these guys did during COVID. This should have been I remember the first thing because I was running Action for Liberty at the point. We put out an email to our people, go, we don't know what this thing is, but we have this huge network of patriots all across Minnesota. And if you are struggling and you need something, reach out to me and maybe we'll figure out a way through our network. Someone like if it's you got to have someone run to the grocery store because you're an 80-year-old woman, maybe one of the people in our network can do that for you. It's like that's what we should have been doing. It's a great time for us to come together. I remember walking in my neighborhood in Lake Elmo and meeting some neighbors because you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Work's done, garage open, in, garage done. Like and we're walkers, so I'm faulting these people. But all of a sudden, we started meeting neighbors who were actually coming out, and I'm like, this is a great thing. I'm going to meet these neighbors for the first time and stuff like that. But then they went the opposite way and they created division. I was like,
And
that is
that is
the
the
worst thing to
shameful.
do.
But
Right.
individuals like you, and so I'm a Jeep guy. So if you don't like Jeeps, I don't want to hear all the hate if you're a Ford or Chevy guy. But and by the way, I have a, GMC truck. But
No one
I'm a
hates
Jeep.
Jeeps.
Listen, on the forums, we get a lot of hate,
I
which is
just get rid of those ducks. That's it. I mean,
that's
those
the
things
fun.
are a
That
little
was
excessive.
but that so hang. This is what I was going to bring up was over COVID, the Jeep community that was the duck, and
Yeah.
that community found out about some young person that was having a birthday, and 150 Jeeps would drive through that neighborhood honking the horns.
Right.
That that's what our government should have been doing for the people. That kind of bringing together. So, no, I absolutely agree. And again, uh, uh, Governor Walz was in charge there, but this was no one was bringing anyone together. Let's be perfectly honest. There were some people saying, keep certain things open in my state, but they weren't bringing people together. They weren't all saying kumbaya. They should have been on the phones with each other saying, hey guys, this is dangerous. This is a
Right.
thing. Let's us all have the same messaging.
All right.
Sorry, Jake.
Speaking of no, I love it, and this is a conversation that I always want to have because I think there's things learned during COVID that were beyond just the policies. It's just good human leadership that was absent during that period of time, especially from Tim Walz. So, speaking of Tim Walz, we learned after a shooting, a tragedy that obviously
Mm.
everyone's horrified by, that we see the solution from them, which in my opinion is not a solution, is banning firearms and banning the amount of rounds in magazines and other gun confiscating things. There's a Second Amendment that is very precious. I think it's very important. Our audience thinks it's important, but what do you think about this? Uh, what do you think the solution is to these mass shootings? And do you believe that you have the right, if you were to become governor, to sign a bill that would confiscate firearms from us?
All right, I'm going to start from the beginning and I'll work my way through, and I'm going to give all you an answer so that and hopefully it's clear and makes sense. But it's not just a one word response. This is a complicated issue for Minnesotans. So first of all, how do I think we could stem these types of events happening? Listen, we have a mental illness crisis in this country, and that is the first thing we need to, from a medical and from an opportunity to be able to circumvent and get in front of some of these people that are causing this carnage. So we have a mental illness problem in the country, and I don't want to use mental illness. We have a problem in our country, and we have to address that first. Now, your gun issue. I think by the way, I'm a staunch advocate of the Second Amendment. I'm an outdoors guy. I own guns, I own handguns, I own shotguns, and I own rifles. But as a common sense Minnesotan, and I've talked to a lot of Second Amendment fervent people, we've talked about and said, do you think that somebody should be able to walk in to Walmart? And I just say Walmart because I don't know if they sell ARs. I'm going to use AR as my they don't. Who does? Shopper City, or I forget.
Oh
It's
boy, you're hurting yourself now in the gun community.
no, it's God, I bought mine up at. I'm just having a brain fart up in Brainerd. Okay, set that aside. That where you can buy it, but being able to walk in and just buy that, most Minnesotans that I've talked to that are gun owners say, I say, would you be willing and open to ensuring that before we put that type of a weapon into somebody's hands, that we have some vetting and training, because that is something that is a could be in the wrong person's hands a dangerous weapon. And I use this as my analogy, so I want your listeners to hear this. We require somebody who's going to go and drive a semi on our roads to go get a CDL, a commercial driver's license. They have to take courses. They have to get behind the wheel of that truck. Why do we make them do that? Because that is a large object that, in the wrong hands on our highways, could cause carnage. Nobody argues with somebody going through the training before they get behind the wheel. So when I talk to people, I say, would you be open, not limiting, no, not banning, to having a training and a know-how to use that type of weapon before we just hand it to any Tom, Dick, and Harry out the door? And again, I'm talking about the AR-15s. I'm not talking about a
So why
handgun.
specifically the AR-15s?
Well, because that's what's being addressed right now. No one's. I mean, what they're talking about, and Governor Walz and everyone else, they're talking about. They like to say assault rifles, but we all know what we're talking about. It's the potential high capacity magazines where as fast as you pull that trigger, the round will come out. Listen, I've shot AR-15s up at my cabin, and that is a powerful weapon, and that thing can rip through metal. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking.
What do you mean rip through metal?
Well, I mean, that round that came out of that gun, it tore through the metal, and I'm talking.
Yeah, but you realize, I think your knowledge of guns is actually very limited here. You
Well,
realize
I
it's a
wouldn't
very
dis
small round.
I wouldn't listen. Well, my knowledge of guns is absolutely limited compared to probably most of your people, but I've seen that round. I don't care. Maybe we had a big round in it. It tore through uh, metal like that, double thick back, the wood, and ripped halfway through the woods because you could hear it. I'm just saying that's a powerful round. And if people couldn't, common sense people can't recognize that that's a pretty powerful weapon, that putting it in the hands of the wrong person, if we can avoid that, why wouldn't we consider that? This isn't
Okay,
about
so
banning.
that is currently what is the case in Minnesota, though. To buy an AR in Minnesota, you do need a permit to purchase or permit to carry. Permit to carry requires you to get a course that focuses on handguns, but essentially, you're still talking about semi-automatic weapons, which is what an AR-15 is. So, it doesn't seem like you're saying something that's actually different than the law right now.
Well, so then you're gonna have to help me on this one, okay? I'll let me plead innocent. What are the weapons? What was the last weapon that was used at the poor church incident? What weapon was used in that incident?
The Port Church, which
The poor church. I was saying at that poor church
an
incident.
Annunciation Church.
Annunciation. I
Gotcha.
used to live
Okay,
right down
gotcha.
the road from it. I should have known. So help
Oh,
me with that. Again,
I think she had a couple, and I believe an AR was one of them, and I think there might have been a 9 mil handgun. I'm already forgetting at this point,
okay.
but
So
I'm pretty sure AR was, and certainly that was the call is to ban assault rifles.
so
So you've addressed the AR-15. So
so
you're
did
not
they go
for what?
through? So did they go through that person? Did that person go through the training and the background, like you said, the licensing or the tap to get that AR-15 before showing up at the church and shooting people?
I'm assuming no. I don't honestly remember to be honest. I'm assuming no, and it was a firearm. Well, let me think about this because they did have video of the person at a gun shop. So maybe that person did have a permit to permit to carry.
Well, they
I
didn't have
honestly
a
don't remember.
permit to they didn't have a permit to carry, but my question was this: did they go through any additional? Again, we're talking about a weapon that could potentially commit that kind of carnage. All I'm saying is, why wouldn't law-abiding gun advocates say, "Yeah, I'm okay with having a few more steps in there
Well, that
before we
individual I
hand
don't
that out
want
the
to get
door"?
training. That individual I'd rather be
Well, I
very
think it
bad
would have
with
been
that
I
firearm.
think it would have been stopped. I think during that training, somewhere through there, someone would have said, "Hey, well, we got a problem over here." I mean, that's what I'm saying is if we can,
I mean,
it
so th- so
it's
I
like a
do
little
remember
more
this from the
time.
story. Yeah, I do remember this from the story. And obviously, what's nice about doing this with show with you is like there's no prep. I just wanted to have a conversation. Had I known we'd been addressing enunciation, I probably would have gone back and remembered some of the or looked at some of the stuff. But I do remember there was a gun shop in I think it was around that area that he had visited. And the gun shop owner just basically said this person, we had on the camera, didn't exhibit any kind of strange behavior. And a lot of these people you just don't know. Some do, right? But some people just don't exhibit any strange behavior.
Well,
It's like
so
no
but
one wants someone like that to have a firearm. No
so
one wants
that's
them
my
to get
point,
any
Jake.
training. Right.
That's my
What is
point.
the point then?
They didn't exhibit at that moment, but had they not walked out of the shop, and I'm just using this with the gun, and had to go through some extensive training to use that weapon and understanding, somebody might have then at that point said, "Hey, we got a problem," because the guy who shot Chris Kyle down in Texas, he didn't exhibit anything until he got on the range and turned on Chris Kyle and shot him. That's my point. Is if you're if you're a Second Amendment person, do you think the founding fathers had in mind that we could walk into limited amount of stores? You're going to get me on that because I don't know what stores you walk into and go buy AR-15s and be able to walk in, grab it, walk out the door. And I know it's not that simple, but
It's not that simple.
when I bought my guns up north, they do my background check, and sometimes I'd walk out with it, and sometime a week later, it'd come back and say, "Yeah, you're good to go." But I don't think by ensuring that we are placing those weapons in the hands of people that shouldn't have them in there, a little bit of a guardrail isn't a bad thing, and it's not taking away your rights. It's ensuring that the rest of the people's rights out there are being protected. So I'll stand by that.
Yeah, I think the founding fathers were real particular in the fact that government can't weigh in on this issue because it's so dangerous. A tyrannical government will confiscate firearms or limit the ability for people to
I
get firearms. And the whole point of the Second Amendment is to stop a tyrannical government. I think people just in their own common sense go, you should learn how to use that firearm. Look, I do firearms training.
Yeah, I
I'm an
saw
advocate
that.
for people to have a constitutional carry, right? To not have to have a permit. But I do think people should use a firearm, just as I teach my kids. You start with having a stick maybe in their hand while we're going, just so they understand the carry. Then it goes to a BB gun, and then eventually my oldest are already carrying shotguns in the woods. Because they are instruments that are very dangerous.
So,
Um,
but we have all
yeah.
these other rules out there to keep people safe that
But this one's
nobody.
an important one. This is an important one because it's actually protected by the Constitution.
So, and again, I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment, but you're talking about the Second Amendment and saying the founding fathers, and I agree with that. But as time and memorial has changed on, I'm just asking common sense people that if we could have a conversation about ensuring, however it is, that people who shouldn't have weapons, period, and especially that weapon, wouldn't you be open to the discussion of in doing that? That's all I'm saying. Is I'm willing to have the discussion, and I think most common sense people would say, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about that. Not taking away your rights. I believe I want
Yeah,
to
but
be able
I
to
don't
defend
you feel like
myself.
don't you feel like the conversation discussions happen and it's two sides and there's one side and this is the side I'm on is that
No,
no, you shall not infringe. There's not a stronger language in the US Constitution than shall not infringe. And there's a
No,
reason for that.
I don't think it's happening, and I don't think we're ever. Listen, these guys can do all their political theater. They are never going to pass legislation on either side. One that says you can never ban guns. Well, it's already in the Constitution. But the other side is this is all political theater for them. They don't want to solve this problem because every 2 and 4 years they want to roll it out and
Well,
bring it
I
up.
disagree with
And
that.
I'm saying,
I think they do want to solve it. I think there are nefarious characters in our government that actually do want to disarm us. And I think there's a real danger. You mentioned during COVID what happened in World War II. And I think that's the danger is a disarmed population is a population that will fall prey to whatever tyrannical whims a government has. And that's 100% why we have a Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be
no
infringed.
disagreement.
It's very obvious that's what it was about.
Yep. No, and no argument. All I'm saying is, if people want to have a discussion about trying to ensure that any weapon or these weapons stay out of the hands of people who shouldn't be in, I'd be open to at least having the discussion as
Well,
long as it doesn't
everyone
infringe
is.
on people's right. That's all I'm saying.
Everyone is, and that's the problem, and that's the thing that no one wants to levy up is that there's no obvious solution out there on how to get them out of the hands of these nutcases. No one wants those people to have firearms. Not a single person, especially that it could be used against kids. And the other thing is because it's a mental defect, right? It's almost like the guns are moot, other than the fact that guns are a more effective way at killing, right? Hence
Yeah.
why it's important for us to have that for a tyrannical government. But they'll use knives, they can use bombs, they can use other things. The idea that somebody could get in their head to go kill innocent children is something that needs to be addressed on a whole different level.
Or killing anybody other than in self defense,
Right, right.
you gotta be mentally
Good point.
defective. But that's
Yeah.
again, that's where our government is failing us because they don't want to have that discussion you just talked about. They want to talk about the effect, not the cause. They don't want to talk about the flawed and broken people and how we've got there and how they've got it. I agree with you. Guns don't shoot themselves. Guns don't walk out in the street and shoot people. There's got to be somebody behind it. And that's one of my arguments is if you're willing to have the discussion over here about who's using them, how they've ended up there and who they are, the other side might be willing to say, yeah, maybe we have a nice training session. Maybe we put this in. I don't, but until they're
I
willing
love
to,
how rosy a picture you give the forces in politics.
well, I
That's not how
think
it's
there's,
going to go.
Jake, I'm probably gonna lose on this one with you and your crowd. I'm just thinking that if we actually, I'm just like a common sense guy. If people want to get together and talk about it, and we can come up with solutions, I'm at least willing to be a broker in it, but in an honest broker with no agenda, no agenda. So I would like to learn more about weapons, safety. I see you do the concealed carry. My brother's a concealed carry guy. I'm not a I'm not as well versed on every single gun, so I'm going to sit back now.
Okay, so and I see a comment from Terry, and that's a good case. So when we were chatting on the phone, you said fiscal conservative and socially liberal. So I want to kind of dive into that because I think I did see some comments people really like in the economics. You might have lost some people on guns.
Sorry about that.
So
I'm
no,
not
it's
coming to
okay.
take your guns. I'm trying to say is let's have some common sense. End of story.
Well, I kind of see what you mean, and so my alarms go off as I know the political forces at play, and there are people with the motivation to take firearms away from us, and some of them might be so dumb as to think that solves the issue. I think there's a good faction of people that they have nefarious ideas behind that. They know it doesn't solve the issue. They want us disarmed, and then that scares me. And that's I think as important to the founding of our country as the First Amendment, the ability that you can petition your government and have free speech, and that you have the right to practice religion. None of that even exists unless you can propel a tyrannical government.
And I
All
don't
right,
and Jake,
so
just so we know, I don't disagree with that. I just want to let you know there are some really nice, well-intentioned people. They're just scared of fire. Not the nefarious
oh,
government people.
100%,
They're
yeah.
they're just scared of it, and to have a sensitivity and at least an understanding about that. That's it.
Well, and I agree with you on that. There's no doubt that's the case, but that doesn't mean we give up. I mean, the Second Amendment should be the solid thing that all government officials abide by, but clearly it's not. So let's talk about this fiscal conservative, socially liberal. I think a lot of people kind of see your head in the right place when it comes to like the tax policy, as you mentioned, and certainly getting rid of the fraud in government. And your COVID policies seem to be spot on. When you said this to me, social liberal, it might even be like somewhere in
Actually,
your
that was in a
press release.
piece, and then I said
Okay, there you go.
it's probably not even pertinent today to use that
Yeah.
terminology
So
because
what
no
is
one
that?
understands that.
Yeah. So, but you hear that often, and to me, it's like, well, what does social liberal mean? Like, I might be socially liberal because I'm not for incriminating, the use of marijuana. Okay. Is that a social left position? I think it is, right?
It is.
I come from it as I just don't like government being big, and I think they fail at pretty much everything, including the war on drugs, which I don't think people should go out and smoke pot all the time. And I certainly don't think they should use most bad drugs. And alcohol really doesn't have a lot of benefits. So I kind of come from that perspective. What does it mean when you say
To
social
me.
liberal?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'll start off by saying this. I have made this has been my lifelong position. I have never cared what consulting two consenting adults do in their private time as long as they don't have dandelions in their front yard and their yards mowed tight. That's what I mean by and
You
you can call it
Nazi. Oh my god.
you can call
Lawns?
it
Are we gonna get
social.
into this?
You
What, you
don't get
can't
into.
have dandelions in your lawn?
It's funny. I know. I'm going to get hate everywhere, but that's my, and I don't even think that's socially liberal. I just think it's an American way that we don't
Yeah.
need to be getting involved in what consenting adults want to do with their life as long as they're not harming people. Period. And if that's a socially liberal thing, tap me with it all day long.
Well, I see that being two different ways, but I think that's very libertarian-esque in many regards. I don't see much harm in that, from a
Well, gay
position of the
marriage.
government.
So gay marriage. Let's talk about gay marriage. I I
No one
I
really does
never.
these days.
No, of course not. But people bring it up and they want to know. I was just asked this in an interview, and they said, "What's your position on what was your stance on the Gay Marriage Act?" And I said, "Well, it's been adjudicated. Number one, and number two, I absolutely supported it because gay marriage didn't affect me in any way, shape, or form. It took nothing away from my life. It made my life no different. And by the way, every single person who opposed it, I want you to go back from when that bill passed to this day and tell me what it did, what negative effects allowing those people to marriage in legally so that they could show up at the hospital to today. How much worse has your life been? So that's my social aspect. Zero. There's been
Yeah, I
no
mean,
negative effect on people.
my where I come on that issue, and honestly, this issue has just not been on the forefront of politics because the society's kind of moved on from it, to some degree. But I look at it as an overstep of government because marriage is very defined as a man and a woman. It's not until more recent that there was a new definition of it. And it's so bad it's permeated into like the ELCA church, which is ridiculous. Like, I know not everyone's a Christian in our society, but even in Christian churches or what used to be, they've redefined something that was like from God, from the scriptures. And so that's the danger I saw in what government did there. Not that I have an issue. Well, I do personally have an issue
And that's
with two
okay.
gay guys. Yeah, it is. It is what it is.
I don't, but that's okay.
Yeah, and I don't care what my personal issue is because I also don't mind if someone has dandelions in their lawn. So
Oh man, I'm gonna
honestly,
lose the dandelion guys.
well, what do you do in Lake Elmo? You can only water twice a week. So
Yeah, that's
that's
bad.
the way I look at that issue is the government overstepped in the sense that they were
Yeah, but you
redefining marriage. I think that's a huge overstep, and I think marriage should always been something that was done in the church
so there
and
was a
private.
difference. There was civil union and there was marriage. Okay,
Yeah,
and
anyone can have
I
a
don't
union. You can define those things. What
and
that to
I
me
don't
is a contract.
it was the term marriage was a church term, civil union. But I believe 100% that gays and lesbians absolutely should have had and had the right to and be in a civil union so that they could have all the same rights that me and my wife have as a loving couple. Because again, what people do on their free time, as long as it's not hurting people or hurting children, should be no one else's business. Just like if someone's wears a mask or doesn't wear a mask. So and you say it's we're moved on from this. We're not moved on from this because when I got asked that 40 times online, what is your position on this and what's your position on that? So that's my liberal
Well, so,
side.
okay, let me redefine what I'm saying there. And I'm not trying to belittle people that still have that as an opinion. I mean, quite frankly, I'm on the opposite side of you, other than the fact that I don't mind what people
And
do
that's
in
okay.
the confines, but I do think marriage should be protected. And I,
The
and I
term,
think
you
it should
mean
be,
the term,
and I think
do
it
you
should be
mean the
protected by government not being involved
but
in
do
it.
you
To be
mean the
honest with you.
term marriage or civil
Correct,
union?
yes. Yes, because
Okay.
marriage so we should have definitions for terms. It's very important to have these terms, and that shouldn't be defined by government, and in this case, redefined by government. And to the point where, and I'm a Lutheran, and the ELCA literally redefined marriage. Oh, it's about trust, about two individuals. I'm like, that's not what the scriptures say at all. It's like clearly one man, one woman. A man leaves his family and becomes one flesh. Like, what are you talking about? So that's what people get upset with. But this is a great
It's
question. This is
okay.
LK to live. Well, I only mean like it's not a forefront issue. Some people care about it, but I don't think it's the big issue of the day. But LK to live writes on Locals, gay marriage was
Oh,
the
I see that.
floodgate that opens a trans right issue. And that I think is what's more salient today. What people really get into is okay, it started with, you know, gay marriage, but now it's like we are supposed to just accept this behavior where, oh, I identify as a woman and now I'm, you know, have access to a locker room where I could play in female sports. And people are like, this is insanity. And it gets even worse. Like it's opened the skate to like, and this is where the Democrats just really lose. I think a lot of people, but certainly people like us, is like, you're allowing drag shows in front of children. And what is that other than like some sexual gratification for the, queer performer? And I mean queer in the sense like the old school way. Like that is very disgusting that you're doing this in front of children. So do you I think that's what people are kind of wondering. So what are your thoughts on this new trans movement? Do you see an issue with this, with the sports, the locker rooms, all that kind of stuff? And what role
So
would government have in all it?
so there's two aspects of that. There's what I will call the adult trans movement and I will call the youth trans movement. So let's go first and
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
let's talk about youth. And I want to start off by saying this. Any young person, and I don't but there are people talking about 5-year-olds, but let's just talk about any young person. We all know that adolescence is the hardest time of our life. Now, put on top of that, potentially these young people having an identity crisis. And whether they're being supported by their parents in one direction or the other direction, they're confused. They're extremely confused. So we need to show a little more empathy for these young people that are involved in that, because most of the direction they're getting is from their parents or from some doctor they've gone to. So I want to be extremely sensitive to these young people because they have a high risk of suicide, and I don't want that. But with that being said, girls' spaces, both in the locker room and on the sports field, need to be safe. Period. Biological boys should not be at youth sports in girls' locker rooms and nor on the playing field. Does that mean that we couldn't find an alternative for these young people to compete somehow, way, shape, or form without taking away Title IX and without taking away these young girls' rights? I think we probably could, but we need to keep that space safe, period, for young girls. They fought for it, they earned it. My wife tells me every day, you're setting Title IX back 50 years. But I want people to be sensitive to these young people. Now, I would do it completely different if my son, I have two boys. I have an 18-year-old and I have a 15-year-old. And if one of my sons came to me and says, "Dad, I'm thoroughly confused about who I am and what I am." I, I would do what most parents would probably do to say, "Son, this is a confusing time. You're in adolescence. These things come in your head." You would give good guidance. I might take them to see a professional. Let's talk about this. Let's understand this. Let's get you through this. But listen, I used to dress up as a woman for Halloween every year. That's what we did when we were young kids. We had a good time, but it didn't mean that I was gonna.
But it
My
got
mom and
awkward
dad.
when you were dressed up that way in November 5th.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is my parents didn't perpetrate this and go, "Hey," but you hear
Yeah,
parents that say we knew from day one. I say,
I
"Okay,
know.
but
It's
let's but
ridiculous.
let's allow them to grow and mature. Let's let that frontal cortex, which by the way, it's 25 years old by the time that fully forms.
Mhm.
Let's let that frontal cortex come into place and let their thinking come. And then once they become an adult and they still feel that they were born in the wrong everything, I say live and let live. If they want to for themselves, go and do that as a fully functioning adult. So that's where I separate the movement.
Most
And
people
I
do, I think.
and,
I
and they
I agree.
do. They do. And then I will tell you, you know, I don't want I think it's hard when you talk about an adult transgender woman going into a bathroom with a 2-year-old girl. I can see the picture. It's not good. And I will tell you, growing up, when I was in the bathroom, I remember there being, and back then they wouldn't call it wasn't transgender. It was cross dressers, or they would use different terminology. I don't know. My dad didn't. He wasn't worried. He's just like, I said, "Wow, Dad, what's?" He goes, "Just someone living, Mike." And I was like, "Okay." I, it, it, we have to keep people safe, but we have to start to say, as long as they're not harming you, harming your children, for God's sakes, just let them live. As long as those caveats are put in there. So
Yeah,
again, that's a
and
very
as long as we're
liberal
not
thing thinking.
yeah, as long as we're not also forced to use certain pronouns too, which is
No,
I think
I,
goes along with that live and let live.
can
It's
I
like, go ahead.
can I tell you something? So I was at the Capitol today. We were doing a press conference, and today was they were calling it. It was called Transgender Remembrance Day, and what they're trying to do is remember um, uh, uh, people who were killed because they're transgender. That's what the movement was. I went in, I looked around, I poked, I didn't know what was going on. I said, "Oh wow, what's going on?" They said, "Oh, this is what we're doing." I'm like, "Wow, okay, yeah, very cool." And I just kind of had a nice conversations, and there was lots of transgender women there. And I said, "Hey, thanks a lot, guys. You have a great day." And all of a sudden, I turned around. No, but it's a natural thing, right? And
I
I
did.
turned around. No, I didn't say thanks, dude. I say thanks, guys, to anybody. If it was a group,
I
hey, thanks,
know,
guys.
but I can see
So
him getting a little upset. It's
no,
ma'am.
no.
It's
I'm going to
ma'am.
tell you that's bullshit. I'm going to tell you that's a news thing, and that's the internet, and that's what
I
people want
think
to propagate.
I think it
I
is
turned
over.
around.
Right.
I turned around because it all of a sudden I go, "Oh, did I?" I turned around. I said, "I got to ask you, did you?" And all of them, there's five. And they go, "No, we don't care." They go, "That's a universal name." I said, "I'm Mike Newcombe. Good to meet you." And I said, "I just wanted to make sure because I wanted to show politeness." And they showed me that that's a bunch of BS, that everyone's offended by this. There was 5 transgender women right there, and not one of them, when I turned around and I said this is a true story. And I said, "I'm sorry, was that the wrong?" And they go, "You don't need to be sorry." And I thought, perfect. And that's what should tell you about this movement is we're all seeing this stuff online where the guy goes
Yeah.
into the where the transgender woman goes into the restaurant and she gets mislabeled. That's all bullshit. They're just doing that for clickbait and for the rest of us to hear. These folks just want to live their lives. So there's my socially
Yeah,
liberal side.
I mean, yeah, there is a faction of people that are trying to do it. I mean, it's happened in Minnesota. There was one that very obviously interrupted a legislative session. There's one that's
Oh,
currently a
I saw that.
there's currently one that's a state representative. So that is a thing, but you're right. I think most people are trying to live their life. I think they're very confused. I would point people towards Sean Ryan's interview with oh shoot, I'm forgetting the name. It was a person that went transgender in a Navy SEAL, which is really puzzling, and then went back. So I want to finish up this conversation on that point.
Okay.
By the way, the Navy SEAL was obviously a full-grown adult, but there is a thing about certainly with youth that go one way, and I think there's societal pressure. Of course, there's societal pressure because how are there all of a sudden way more transgenders? Like, right? That doesn't even make sense.
Group think.
Yeah, so, but then they grow up, back when we were young, it was tomboys, right? They grow up and they fit into the gender that they are. And so, but we're doing stuff now. I know medical procedures or surgical procedures are very rare, but it is legal in the state of Minnesota. Certainly hormone treatment is something that's pushed and okayed. We don't know the full numbers, but we know they're happening. Um, Dr. Hepford, I want to say is the name at Children's, has been very vocal about being like the premier doctor that does this. This is something that became an issue a couple years ago when the Democrats took over Minnesota government. They actually initially did an executive order, and then it went into law that we're a sanctuary state. And in the words of Peggy Flanagan, sometimes our children tell us things, and we need to listen to them.
Yeah.
And on stage is a 6-year-old transgender kid, a 6-year-old Mike. I have a 5-year-old at home, and 2 kids a little older than that, and that's a ridiculous thing to claim. And some, and it breaks my heart, are receiving hormonal treatments and puberty blockers, and in many cases, and what the bill was about is against the wishes of another parent.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is legal in the state of Minnesota, but the Democrat Party not only seems to be okay with it, they've gone so far to have a cross-dressing drag show in front of children at the state capitol at the Rotunda.
Well, I don't
Um,
think any of that's appropriate. I mean, I wouldn't, listen, I wouldn't give my son puberty blockers, just like I wouldn't give my son a nose job before he's 18. I wouldn't give my daughter puberty blockers, just like I wouldn't allow her to have breast augmentation. But that happens. It happens. Those types of procedures happen with people. So I wouldn't do it personally. And when you say it's
but for
legal,
minors, do you think that should be legal?
when you say should it be legal for a minor to get a nose job?
No,
There,
I don't think that's even close to equate
no,
the
I'm just
same
asking
thing.
you. Do you
I
think
don't
it's
think that's an issue. Like, I think a nose job meaning what are you saying, like a cosmetic nose job?
yeah,
Or are you saying
they're
like a
changing their look. They're changing their look, is all I'm saying. Do you think that young people should be getting cosmetic surgery? I'm going to bring it full circle, but do you think
I
that
could
young
see the
people?
argument against it. Honestly, I don't even think that's important to discuss. I mean, certainly we don't think they should get tattoos under 18, but we're talking about like stopping puberty here. We're talking about like changing sex organs that are irreversible. Like, to me, it seems like that should be illegal, should it not?
God, I have a heart. Listen, this is such. When you say should it be legal or should it be illegal?
Should it be illegal? It is currently legal in the state of Minnesota to chop up a minor.
I don't. I wouldn't do it, and I don't know enough about the legality aspects and how many people are doing this. I don't. I don't know that answer. From my heart, I don't believe we should be doing this to children. Period. That's what my heart says to me. Okay. I
Okay.
don't believe that we should be taking children and changing who they are at that age. Period. This is, as limited as it's happening now. My only struggle, why I said that to you, is it's when we start to impede on certain parental, and I just don't know what these families are necessarily going through, and I don't know exactly who that child is, so that I can't say, oh my God, that they are really not who they appear to be. So that's what I mean.
But
But my heart
but
says
isn't that
no.
moot though at under 18? Like they don't know. Like we can't take
Oh,
their word for it. We can't
that's
take the
why I'm saying
parents'
is
word.
my heart says absolutely it should not be. It shouldn't be allowed to happen for young kids. Period. So
But
there's my position.
you don't you just haven't thought of like this should be outlawed in the state. I mean, there are states that have done it, right? This is the thing. Florida, Tennessee.
So I'll bring it back to this. This is an important issue. Okay. When I was jumping into this race and I knew these questions would come up, and I've always had my positions on them because how I felt. But for me, the most important issues when I start to talk about is taxes and government and fraud. We're talking about a less than a 0.5% issue. And I just don't want it to get lost in translation. I don't believe that young kids should be allowed or their parents allowed for puberty blockers or cosmetic changes to their physique, period. That is my personal stance. Would I put that as my flag and say I'm running on this and the minute I get into the state it's all going to be outlawed? I don't think that's top of mind for every single person.
I think it's a big contingent of the population that feels that way, and I think that's where a lot of people think the Democrat Party is not savable because they have gone so wrong in that direction.
Yeah, it's an
And
80-20 deal. I get
well,
it.
if we go back to COVID, I know a lot of people that got the experimental shot, and I'm like you. If you want to do that, go ahead. I think that's a dumb decision that you injected your body with something that was experimental, but you have the right as an adult. But I know those same people, and this is a lot of people, and probably people that even watch the show. Once it came to injecting their kids, it was a totally different story because there's just something about our kids that's so precious that we really have to save. But we also know those people that as soon as the COVID shot was okay for their children, they pushed them the front of the line. And I'm like,
Well,
wow.
so we do that. I mean, when you want to talk, I mean, the COVID, my kids didn't get the COVID shot. And I said, I absolutely wouldn't give them the COVID shot. They don't need it. The study says that these kids aren't dying. But we love to parse stuff where we push our kids into certain vaccinations and no one thinks about it. Like, oh yeah, we'll just go get this vaccinated and this. And now I'm not talking about polio and I'm not talking about measles, but there's a lot of other vaccinations that we have at certain time periods when we bring our kids up. I do have a hard time with that, but we all go along with it. So people go along with it and some people don't. But these are issues to me. There's some individual we should be able to have individual freedoms and rights that if you want to get what you call the experimental jab, which we all now know was definitely experimental because
Mhm.
the real science was not out on it, then if people wanted to get it and they're go ahead. But if you didn't want to get it, go ahead. I'm just in this libertarian camp of and if people wanted to give their kids the shot, I don't think the government should come in and say, you can't give your kids that shot. Because then why don't we start saying now the government's in charge of all children in the country? Period.
Well, no, I'm sympathetic to that in the sense that if it doesn't obviously create harm, then there's an argument for it. And the COVID shot, well, at the time, the stats weren't there because well, they lied about the shots, and it seems like there's elevated cases of myocarditis, and the benefits to children are seem to be minimal, but at the time they didn't know. But it's different when it comes to like puberty blockers, irreversible puberty blockers, and hacking up genitalia at a young age. It's like, well, that is creating harm. That is actually creating a lot of harm. I mean, there's just it's just obvious. You talk about common sense. It's common sense, but it's
Listen,
also
I
in the literature.
I agree. Listen, I said I agree
It's
with
just like you can't beat up
exactly
your
what you
kids, as I see
said.
Red Red Rule.
I agree with what you said, but I also wouldn't let my kids play hockey and get 4 concussions. But people do it every day of the week. I wouldn't let my kid have 2 knee surgeries when he's 14 years old, and parents do it all the time. So there's these certain things that I completely disagree with. But I don't want the government coming in and saying nope, we're going to pick this one and you can't do it. I am on your camp about mutilation and puberty blockers. I would never do it in my life. But talk about gun control. You want to talk about slippery slopes? If we start mandating every single thing that we don't agree with and we find horrible, which I do, then what's the next thing? Because isn't it torture to send a kid out to the hockey game that already had 4 concussions and now he's going to grow up and he's going to have permanent brain damage? I don't know what.
Well, I actually think you make an interesting case there. Your original analogy is like the risk is low for that, but you're right. Like, I guess if a kid was, concussed many times, and yeah, that there's probably science there. I don't know it well
No,
enough,
there
but
is
I'd have to
science.
my
No,
dad.
listen,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's
Well, I
100%
mean,
science
certainly in
because
the
I have
NFL
it in
that's
my
been studied.
family. I have
Yeah, certainly in
nephews.
the NFL that's been studied very well, and that's why they changed the game. So, no, I
But
would actually agree with you on that point.
what about repetitive sports? I mean, again, there's
Well,
a
because
million
I don't
studies
think
that
the
say
harm
that.
I think the harm is very low risk, and that kinda goes back to those
So when they're
vaccines is
50 years old and they can't walk and they can't throw and they're in a
you
wheelchair,
don't know that. That's the problem is you don't know that. Like, look, I've
how
done
many
many
guys you
things.
know in their 50s that played football or hockey in high school and maybe into college that today don't have a major shoulder injury and haven't had 2 hip replacements and a knee? I just about every one of my
W
friends
w
walks like this. And I tell everybody, I said, thank God I was never a great athlete. I was athletic, but I was never good at one sport. So I'm just saying is the minute we
Yeah,
start
well, I think there's a
picking and
big
choosing.
difference in something that also might not cause that, and it's just, typical tendon and joint pain versus, like, sex organs, and, like, you will be sterile, and you
I
can't have children, and you
I'm
don't end
agreement
up
with
going
you.
through puberty, which is, like, to me, like, torture, like, that you're stopping the natural design, but, um
So again, I just want to touch on that. I'm in agreement with you. But here's who is that young person when if their parents did that to them and they get into their latter life, who are they going to hate when they realize that that happened to them? They're not going to hate me and they're not going to hate you. They're going to look back and say, "Boy, I was ill advised." And that's a sad testament to the parenting. So that's my point is we
Well,
all
there are
want.
bad parents out there, and I agree with you, like, allowing parents to do obviously, it's a very risky thing, interjecting ourselves in the parenting, but you can't let a parent beat up their kid, right? So, we do understand that there is a role for the state to play when it comes to violence, and I think this might enter that category. Let me
Okay,
move on.
we
One
can
other
move
issue.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, one other
I hope
issue.
that answered at least my where I'm at.
Well, listen, you were saying, "Oh, I hope the show goes well." I go, "Just tell the truth. Telling people what you
I'm
think,"
trying to tell that you know what it's this is an interesting thing. I'm not a politician. I'm not seasoned, and these are great questions, and I need to be able to answer them, and I need to be able to answer what the people's are. And what I'm trying to be here is authentic and sincere, but at the same time, I'm trying to show some compassion to people that are going through some really tough stuff.
All right, one other thing when you say fiscally conservative, social liberal, obviously, I think a lot of people think about abortion. Some people overplay how important that is in the elections. I did obviously make a difference in 2022. People way overplayed that in 2024. Republicans seem to fear talking about that issue nowadays.
Yeah.
There's a substantial pro-life movement inside the Republican ranks. I think they feel abandoned by those people because they do that. Obviously, the left thinks, and this isn't just speculation. The Democrats literally passed a law in this state that says a baby born alive from a botched abortion will not receive life-saving care. And obviously everything before that too. So partial birth abortion,
Oh,
full third
yeah.
trimester baby. So where are your views on abortion?
Okay. I'm going to give you the full view. Are you guys ready? Safe, safe, legal, and extremely rare. But I want to have a discussion about guardrails, especially pertaining to late term abortions and the situation you just described. But prohibition is not on my agenda.
Okay, so and I appreciate this, and I actually have a Democrat on the show on Tuesday. So it's really funny as these Republicans dodge, and I totally disagree with your position, by the way.
That's okay. And
Um,
that's okay because it's
I know
America.
it's okay. Yeah, we're just having a conversation,
Yeah.
and it's funny how these Republicans are dodging this show, even though they purport to believe what I believe. And here you are, a different position. Now I got a Democrat coming on Tuesday, and that'll be real fun. And I don't mind having these conversations. So I don't get to have this one as much. And where I like to just start, when do you believe life
I'm not
begins?
going to go. So I gave you asked me what my position on abortion was. Okay.
Mhm.
That was your question, Jake. And I said, here's my position. And I moved in real close: safe, legal, and extremely rare. I'm, and I would be open to discussions about guardrails, especially on these late term abortions and on the situation you did. Now, you're going to want to ask me, when do I believe life? And we can go
Right.
down this whole path.
Well, because I
I've
think that's
stated
so
my point. I
pertinent,
think
right?
well, it's not. I've stated my position very succinctly and very clearly. Now you want to go down the rabbit hole and educate me about when life starts and when do I think life starts and all of that. And I don't think that is going to get any more out of this other than what I've already said. So everyone knows my position, and that's it.
Well,
As far as that's concerned, I'm just saying that.
it's no trick here. So the reason I asked that question, because I think this is the question that doesn't get asked. We go back to that gun debate, and we talk about the two sides are so dug in, and so I accuse you of having this rosy picture of the way politics work, because I know how politics works, and it just isn't going to go that way. We're not going to have a conversation. Um, Abortion seems to be that way, but at least people on my side are being honest, in my opinion, because we're saying life begins at a certain time, in this case conception, because it seems to be the most obvious. But I'm open-minded to society declaring it 6 weeks or some time point, but we have to do that, and the left doesn't want to have that, because once you define when life begins, then you got to protect life, right? Legally,
So
because we do have murder laws, right?
So my listen, my wife is educated me on this, and we've had these conversations for many years, and I've talked about um, abortions. Listen, if we never had another abortion in this country, I'd be the happiest guy in the planet. Okay, but again, prohibition to me is not gonna is not part of the equation. When does life begin? My wife was talking. She says, and she's very pro-choice. Okay, I don't like the term because I don't think it's the right term. She says, yes, but after 6 or 8 weeks, if you haven't made a decision by then that should be the breaking point. And I'm pro-choice, Mike. And I said, okay, are we talking about a time frame that says at 6 weeks? So, according to my pro-choice wife, she says that people should be able to make a decision up to this point, and after that, we should, unless the health of the woman or the baby's at risk, then that's it. So I guess without having thought about, because again, my when you kind of say nope, I'm safe, legal, and rare, it kind of sets the stage for you to go then and ask me that. I don't. 6 weeks to me, I think life begins uh, at a period of time when the cells are going together and things are happening. That's my opinion, but that's not my stance. And I know it's hard to separate
Well,
the
and you
two.
know what I mean. Like, you say safe, legal, all right? Well, it's obviously not safe to
Well, the minute you
whatever that is, but it's like legal. It's like, well, that's the crux of the matter is
there it
we
is.
have to define what a life is, and then you have to legally protect that after that point. And but you see what I'm saying? Like,
I
no
do.
one on the left wants to do that because they essentially want the convenience of being able to just abort a unwanted kid.
S-
And by the way, unwanted in any regard, like oh, it's just not the right time for the family, right?
So what happens is that, and you were talking about the left, and I'll just do left and right. Everyone is so entrenched in their things because of the how it's being attacked, how they're being attacked. If you're a murderer, you're killing this, and you're doing this. Um, the problem is, I think if we actually could have a discussion, a cohesive discussion, not about prohibition, but talking to people and saying, listen, could you not agree that at this period of time that decision should have been made, and because it's a much more, it's a viable fetus outside the human body? The answer, I'll guarantee you, these entrenched people on the left would say, let's have that. You're willing to have that conversation with us? Then let's have that conversation. And the people over here would say, well, we're willing to talk about that. We still are completely diametrically opposed to any abortion, but we're willing to have that discussion. But no one's willing to broker and have that discussion. Nobody.
Well, and I think, if I was governor, I would say this needs to be decided by law
Oh,
when that age
16
is.
weeks. 16 weeks, not 6 weeks. I just got corrected. Sorry.
Oh, your wife? Oh, gotcha.
Oh boy, now I'm out the door.
Well, it's interesting how she comes at that perspective, I mean, listen, once again, if
She's
it
a woman. She's got her own perspective.
well, I mean, you would think you would hope it's scientific, right? Like, you would imagine that, like, we should have a
Yeah,
scientific definition when life begins. There are 20-week bills, right?
yeah.
And, at the point of I wanna see less abortions and less kids being killed. then it's like if 20 weeks is what we decide is the legal age, right? Then we have to protect that life. I believe that's a bad. I think. I mean, I would sign a bill like that just because it's incrementally better, but I just don't think that's the right answer. It seems like it's a lot sooner than that, right? I
But
mean,
you
I
just
think.
came up with a compromise. Look at that. You just
Well,
broached
just
the
in the sense
subject.
that I think that's the problem here is the left does not want to define when life begins because of convenience sake,
Oh, I
right?
don't. No, I don't. I disagree with that. I
Well,
think
okay, I'll beg you. Ask. In fact, if you get on the stage with Governor Walz, you ask him when life begins, and he will not have an answer to that question.
my wife is so funny. Then if Governor Wall says that, but listen, you and I, we are not in agreement on the subject, which is great, which is okay. But look how we're talking about it.
Oh, I
You're
know.
willing,
It's so
but
dangerous
you're
to have a conversation, right?
no,
Yeah,
and
it's funny, yeah.
here's the deal. I am so willing to have the conversation, and
Yeah.
I'm
No, I
willing to
appreciate
learn,
it.
and I'm willing to do everything, and I'm willing to hear both perspectives. The problem is when you call names and you attack people, they just shell up. Listen, you've been in a fight with your wife. You call her a name, it's over. So the minute one camp calls one camp a name and the other camp, they're not having a discussion.
Okay, well, let me push back on you on that, okay?
You
So
don't
you
fight with
cannot
your
use that.
wife?
No, well, they're rare. We do have a great marriage. That's a bad analogy to me because in the political arena, I am not dealing with someone that I've got committed trust with and building life with. That it's not like my neighbors, it's not like my friend group, it's not like the families that I coach their kids. That's different. Politics is a different arena. You are dealing with the scum of the earth, people with hidden agendas, getting paid off. Gee, at the federal level, I don't know, pedophiles in some big sex trafficking ring. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's
the kind of
bad.
people you're dealing with here. People that want to like disarm you, people that want to take your liberty, people like Tim Walz that can just tell you if you're essential or not essential. So I do approach politics in that way because of the people I'm dealing with. In my personal life, very much like you deal with your wife, I would deal with my wife that way because it's a there's a trust, there's a respect there. That's just gone in the political arena. You have to roll
Yeah,
up the
I
sleeves and get things done
well, and
for the
again, this is
people, for the good people out there.
no, and so you just made my case. You just said everything that is broken and wrong with the system. Period. I don't disagree with you that both of these parties have corrupt problems, they have a Epstein problems, they have all of that. But what I will say is there's a lot of good intentioned people that go in. There's some bad people that go in. But there's a lot of good intentioned people that go into politics with only wanting to do what's right. And then they get sucked into the
Yep.
machine, the
Mhm.
Democrat machine and the Republican machine. And I just want to, I want to tell you something. So I am disappointed extremely with Governor Wallace and how he's managed our state. I know you really don't like it, and that's way okay. I'm extremely disappointed. But I'll guarantee you, when he first ran for office, he went in and said to his wife, and I don't know if his daughter was born, I'm going to make a difference, honey. I'm going to
Mhm.
change the way and I'm going to help people and I'm going to do what's right for Minnesota. And I'm going to go to, because he first went to DC. And then he got in DC and they go, hey, Representative Wallace, this is how things are done. So he spent some time there, and then he's like, oh wait a minute, I did go in with good intentions, and I have all this good stuff, and then all of a sudden he becomes governor. In his first term, it was like, okay, he had his positions, they weren't quite where they were at. They weren't quite where they were at, and he had his positions over there. And all of a sudden, the machine, no, 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 and then he gets chosen for vice president, and the gloves are off. And this isn't even the same guy. I watched his old stuff. Listen, I
Hi,
watched.
I'm Tim Walz. I've been
Yeah,
like this my
you.
whole life.
Well, you can make fun of him, and I'm not
Well,
gonna.
I'm just
But
like, who is
it's
this guy?
okay.
It's an act.
But
It's
but
so goofy.
that wasn't him. And
It
and my
definitely wasn't.
this
Although
is my
the Walz we know is angry all the time.
well, I know. My point is this: that I know that yourself and you guys are really ticked off at the system and the corruption and the bad people, and I get that. But the only way I can possibly help is by getting involved as an independent. My only avenue. You've got a great avenue here, and by the way, bless you for building a brand and being able to do this. And even if I was diametrically opposed to everything you said on here, I'd say good for you, my man. It's America, and hopefully, I'm assuming you're able to monetize this, and and live and have a great life. That's the great thing about it. But I can't. I could have done that same thing and said, I'm going to start my podcast. Which, by the way, I'm not ripping on you or being critical, but I said I'm actually going to run for governor because this system is broken. And these poor people, they get sucked into the political matrix and their whole brain chemistry changes. And then they're all they're doing is this, and they're saying the same thing. What I'm saying to Minnesotans is I'm an open book. I'm an open guy, and I want to actually get things done. I don't see the Democrats as the enemy, and I don't see Republicans as my enemy. I actually see that I can be an honest broker between the two of them. I really believe that. I could be delusional, but I'm okay with that.
Well, I think your business acumen is like impressive, and so I think that alone would make people assume you would be better at running the government than Tim Walz, who seems to be more impressed with the Chinese model of business.
God, you guys are horrible. I love how you take. It's
well,
so funny.
do you not know about his? Do you not
No,
know about? Oh, it's
yeah.
it's a love affair. It's very interesting. I mean, that's not just like a speculation. Like literally multiple trips to China. It actually is fascinating that he had a top
It is
secret
interesting.
clearance, like in the military, with all those trips to China. Because as a guy that had a top secret clearance, or at least a secret clearance, maybe didn't have TS. Like you get questioned about things like that. It would be amazing that he was going to China that often.
So here's my question to you and the audience. So knowing all of this, knowing what we know about government, the audience, and right now, 80% of people will vote for a Democrat or a Republican.
Right. Unfortunately.
So we know all of this, and we won't get off the thing. And I'm saying I am now a viable alternative to the status quo. You've been asking for it. You've been starving for it. You may not agree with me on every issue, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, my only vested interest is in Minnesotans, not the special interest, not the insurance companies, not the rich guy down the block that gets the government contract. I'm an honest broker, and that's what I'm trying to bring to the table. And that's where my hardest part's going to be, is to dislodge people from the Democrats and the Republicans. There's probably, and I haven't seen anything, I'm sure we're going to get off here and I'm going to get a lot of hate, and I'm going to say it's okay. But I'm here to try to help. So maybe just say I disagree with the guy and move on.
Well, I know in my audience, they just appreciate you even being willing to come on here because there's a lot of chickens in the Republican Party,
Well, that should tell you something about them. They don't have a message.
Exactly.
And they're afraid. I at my press conference today, I said my campaign is going to be about substance and real issues, not finger pointing and name calling. And what I said is, if you need a political figure, if you need to use a nasty word to describe a political opponent, that's an automatic disqualifier for public service, and it should tell you something. They have nothing to run on. They have nothing to run on.
All right,
I know you and I will disagree on that one.
100% on that one.
It's okay. It's America.
But I would agree with that on just normal people. But when it comes to political creatures, I disagree. But Respect for America has asked this question repeatedly in the things. And I didn't want to disrupt it earlier on because I want to get down to some issues. Ask him, did you vote for President Trump, Kamala, or a third party in this last election?
Actually, I voted for the third party, Stein. I was
the Green Party, huh?
Whatever. You want to know why? Because I was
very much so. We all want to know.
Because I was disenfranchised by both of these parties. So my background is Republican, of course. But that was my father was a conservative, but today he would probably be a moderate Democrat, I guess, in today's modern era. And when I looked at that election, and I thought and saw what was who was up for the stuff. Now, I would not have voted for Kamala Harris in any way, shape, or form. I thought she was not prepared, not ready. Aside from everything else, she was not to be the commander in chief. And that's why I put my vote there. And the reason I wouldn't support Donald Trump in this election was very simple. I think he has too many character flaws for me to jump in and be like, that's my guy. I'm going to die on the sword for that. That was my opinion. And so the easiest thing for me to do was to say, I'm going to vote over here, because I was a person of my convictions, and character has a lot to do with me. Now, do I think on some of his policies, I think securing the border, fantastic. I think it was a great policy and a great thing. But what he brought to the table and how he approached certain things, it turned me off as a human, and that as just an individual. And that's the truth. But
Okay,
people keep saying,
I,
"Would
I
you
got,
support the president?" Of course, as a governor, you support the president.
well, it depends. If Biden's trying to inject experimental shots in the arms of workers, I would say no. I don't
Well, I
support
would
the
have
president.
no, I would have no. What I mean is that at the end of the day, if you're a governor, somebody asked, "Would you support President Trump?" And I said, as the governor of Minnesota, I would want to have the best working relationship with President Trump so that I could bring all the booty back to Minnesota and make Minnesotans' lives better. So if it's working with somebody and having a good working relationship, absolutely. Now, if President Biden was in there and I needed to get stuff from Minnesota, I'd have a great working relationship. I wouldn't agree with his jabbing people and doing that, but am I going to be able to pick up the phone? For sure.
Um, I don't know if Biden would have been able to. Uh,
Oh God, you are bad.
well, come on, let's just admit it. Like that was interesting. The big lie that he was, sharp as a tack.
I,
I'm actually kind of
I
curious
agree.
now.
By the way, I agree 100%. That was a travesty.
Okay,
And
you agree with the fact. You agree with the fact. Can we? It's a fact now.
no,
It
it
was
was a
a
fact.
fact. It was a fact 2 years ago, but like literally, there's another reason the Democrats have lost people forever. They
Well,
lied about this. They acted
no,
like,
that
no,
you're
he's mentally fit.
so
What are you talking about?
so you're right. And there's a lot of Democrats that say, I can't be part of that brand anymore. That was a big lie perpetrated on the American public. And
I
that's
know.
why during this
Yes.
election, I, I'm both parties are seeing, hey, I'm disenfranchised. I don't like what I'm hearing.
Oh, it's happening in droves right now. Um, I'm just curious. Who did you vote for in 2016?
Trump.
Okay, so you and I are the exact opposite. So I actually went third party that year,
Okay.
Gary Johnson, because I didn't like the choices. I hated Hillary Clinton, but I didn't like the choices. And then I voted Trump in 2024, and it wasn't so much that Trump deserved my vote, although I think he was right on some pretty monumental policy areas. It was just what the Democrats pulled off, which on this show we called out. We called this out a year before it happened. We said Joe Biden will clear out the primary field and they will insert their candidate at the convention. And at that point, I believed that it was going to be Michelle Obama. And I think they probably realized maybe Michelle didn't want to do it and they were trying to do it, but that they would have realized that would have been the best ticket, instant name ID, likability, all that kind of stuff. And instead, would they go with a crazy, she's not even dumb because apparently she's intelligent, but she comes across that way. She couldn't do an interview and very unqualified for the position. And worse, they did it before the convention. They did it on like a town hall or something like that, like a little convention on the phone a couple days before the actual convention. And by the way, no, don't think anyone believes Biden literally decided to resign.
I don't think he did.
I think they put it out there on Twitter because that's how they released it, by the way. They
Yeah, no, I
tweeted out
remember.
he's resigning from the race, and then, hey, what are you going to do about it? You know?
And let me explain. I mean, it's interesting how we were inversed on that. So I also voted for Jesse Ventura, and I voted for Jesse because he had a very populist, straightforward, simple message. These two parties are broken, and I'm the solution. And if you can answer that question when I get done here, is that and I enjoyed that. And then Jesse completely, once he got into the office, something happened to him and the press were jackals and he fought with everybody and he got the license tabs lowered. But after that, he just kind of he lost me and he lost the people who voted for him. That's what with Donald Trump of that first election, I like the fact that we had an outsider who wasn't just like Jesse, an outsider who wasn't a politician, who was a successful business person in this country that had this American first agenda. But it was very simple at that time. It was just let's make sure that we're getting treated fairly around the world. And then he got into office, and what I saw was not. And it wasn't the Russian gate. I knew that was all a hoax. I didn't like he kind of did a Jesse on me and
Yeah.
and instead of doing the people's business and trying and he got sidelined. I understand that. He got sidelined, but he lost me there. And I said, doggone it, we have such great opportunities to do something and your own personal egos get in the way and there we are. So
Well, that's essentially what's happening in the MAGA movement right now to a large degree is people feel like he is not going the America First direction. And I just think objectively he's being steered by the wrong people, the
yeah, I don't.
neocons and the establishment Republicans, to the point where he's now saying we need to primary Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was a big
Oh, did
supporter
you
of
see
his.
what he put out today? By the way, did you see the tweet he put out today?
The one about death
Treason.
penalty. Yeah, I did see that.
Listen, do you
No
really think?
context to that either.
Well, the context was the Democrats had made a comment on. Oh God, I'm gonna have a. He was responding to the Democrats wanting to do something, and it was not that. And then the president of the United States of America, the leader of the free country, puts out that tweet talking about elected officials and other Americans. I'm sorry, you lose me at that, my friend.
Well, I think he's losing a lot of people on this kind of stuff, and the Epstein file was some crazy thing that he took a lot of political capital and then lost in the end. I'm still hopeful for the guy that he can just get past this neocon influence and this establishment Republicans. But when you're telling me that Thomas Massie needs to be primaried, but Lindsey Graham is your first fundraiser of the year, I'm like,
Well,
this is not. This is not at all what we thought.
but
One last question for you. This
oh
was so interesting because we're not going to affect federal politics much here.
no,
Someone did ask a very fair question because
okay.
you do live in you live in Senate District 41. How did
Oh,
you vote in 2022, Judy Seberg or Tom DePel?
I'm unaware. I'll be honest.
Oh, you know what? I just realized that you
I
moved to
thought
Lake
it was.
Elmo a year
Yeah,
ago, didn't you?
I just moved to here. I mean, I know Betty
Oh, okay.
McCullough's are.
Yeah.
So no, you caught me
No,
off there. I'll be
that was
honest.
that's a state senate race. That I thought that was a great question, and then I realized, yeah, you said yesterday you moved like a year and a half ago or something like that. So,
Yeah.
that would have been the race in Senate District 41. It was decided by 321 votes,
Oh,
and that's what gave the Democrats the majority of the whole government. So I thought it was a great question. I forgot the timeline here. You
20 years
probably
ago, I could tell you every state rep, and every, no, 30 years ago, I could tell you every state rep and every state senator. Today, I know a handful of names just from being engaged in the process, which is um, sad for me because I really do enjoy the politics, but not today.
gotcha.
But can I?
Well,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
yeah,
Jake.
go ahead.
No,
Yeah, last word here. I do want to wrap things up and go to the post show because I got something juicy. I think a lot of our audience will like. So,
okay.
and if
No,
you're not a premium insider, you can go to truthhurtsnews.com even after the fact if you're watching after the fact, or you can go to Rumble, or I will post the link right now. But go ahead. What was your thought there?
well, I'm just gonna, in a closing thing. Number one, I really appreciate this opportunity. I think it shows that my willingness to step outside the box and to come somewhere that I'm not familiar with. I'm not in take the questions. Some stuff I need to work on. I'll be honest. I don't know everything about guns, and I
I
don't
agree
know
with
where,
that.
and I don't know where to buy them. But I wanted to be honest to you, and I wanted to be honest to your people who are watching, and I want to be honest to the other people. There's a lot of things that we need fixed in our state, and it's not all about what I think. It's about getting the right people in learning what the right answers are and actually getting something done. I don't know everything and I don't have all the answers, but the difference is I'm willing to work with everybody. I don't care if you're an independent, a Democrat, or a Republican, or an agnostic, never had a political affiliation. If we can help make Minnesotans' life better and give everybody access to the good life, I'm on board.
Great, great. All right. Website and ways people can
Oh,
find you.
so Newcome, Newcome, for governor.com. It's Newcome, Newcome, for governor.com. And as an independent, I am not taking any special interest money. I am not taking PAC money. I will only accept money from hardworking Minnesotans who want to be represented. Period. So that tells you where my values are. And yes, I'm putting skin in the game, not as a vanity project. I'm not tone deaf. I want all of you to know I'm in it and I'm in it with you. So feel free to invest in the cause.
All right. I appreciate it very much. And yes, very much for doing this. I obviously go places where NPR won't. You were
You
like,
guys were a
I'm
little
doing
more
NPR.
hard hitting. Yeah, you were a
Oh
little more
God,
hard.
it's yeah. Well, it's more entertaining, hopefully. Boy,
Yeah.
NPR is really a snooze fest. All those things are a snooze
Nah, they
fest,
were
and they
nice
don't have.
guys. They asked these
Yeah, they
questions. They
are
just
nice
asked
guys.
them. They just didn't.
Yeah.
You do a great job. So thank you very much,
Oh,
and
thank you. Appreciate it.
let the chips fall where they may.
I love it. All right, Mike. Very nice talking to you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be back next Tuesday with Billy Nord. He's a candidate for U.S. Senate in Minnesota. He's a Democrat, which is interesting. I'm actually very much looking for. It's almost like, hey, I'm doing a show to try to, talk to people of a different persuasion. It's not really what I set out to do. It just kind of manifested this way. I legitimately have put out some requests to talk to some of these Republican governor candidates. Patrick Knight, which I know nothing about, haven't heard back from him. Ryan Wilson, a little disappointed, to be honest with you. Called and texted him multiple times. And then I saw he did some radio show today. It's like, all right, well, I guess Ryan Wilson doesn't really care about you guys, the audience of this show, which is a pretty damn important audience, if you ask me. Like thousands of people, and many that are activists and delegates inside the Republican Party. Lots of, I know, Max donors that are parts of this audience. I think that's kind of a mistake by them, unless they really don't think they got a good thing to say. Because I invited Ryan to come on the show to make a case for Lisa Damoth, who I'm not convinced on being a good candidate, both because of what she, how she votes. So technically, what she believes in, unless she just doesn't vote at all, what she believes in, but how she votes, and just like some of the surface level stuff, like your messaging and your presentation. So I don't know. Becky says, so he is an independent, not a Republican. So yeah, Becky, he's running as an independent. He actually got the endorsement of the Ford Party, and I just totally forgot to ask him that question. But how do they plan to get ballot access? Do they think they'll achieve that? Because technically, they don't. He doesn't have automatic ballot access, which is one of the things about the two-party system. Is you automatically end up on the ballot because of ballot access. So, yeah, they first of all have to be able to even get on the ballot. I would imagine the Ford Party's got a plan for that. O'Ban says Knight was at the Senate Forum on Tuesday. Yeah, unfortunately. Listen, I know Ryan Wilson's got time. He literally called. I was meeting with someone for a beer and he called the other guy. So like, I know he's got time to call me back. Patrick Knight, who knows? Maybe they haven't got to my thing. So, but I'm open minded. I think I'm actually going to go invite Kendall Qualls, and maybe Chris Robbins. I'll talk to any of these people. I was saying this to someone the other day. I have no problem discussing this stuff or debating people, because it's really easy when you tell the truth. I have to preface that with, it doesn't mean I'm always right. I think I'm right a lot. I could get something wrong. I could be misguided by something. But when I say it to you guys, I'm telling you what I believe to be true. I'm not lying. Boy, the guilty conscience I would have if I came on here and had to like just utter some talking points and bullshit talking points and stuff I didn't believe in. Then I would be nervous. But I'm not nervous on this stuff. I'm just telling you what I think. And quite frankly, what's going to happen? Someone beats me? Like, they're better at the debate than me? Okay. Maybe I got to learn how to be a little bit better at debating my point. Or maybe I was wrong and I got convinced. Like, what's the damage there? It's like when, Walter Hudson talks shit about the show and he won't come debate us on it. It's like, what? Dude, if you want to talk shit and then you think you've got all the right answers, which you don't, because he was completely wrong on the budget, then like, come on, let's discuss it. And I even offered to go. You tell me where to go. I have no problem talking to anyone. And I really enjoyed the conversation with Mike. I thought we would agree with a lot more than on the issues. Turns out he has a lot of issues that I take that are very different than mine, unfortunately. I was very open-minded to a third-party candidate. We'll see where that thing goes. But at least he came on and discussed it. I don't know what's with these other cowards. It's a little upsetting if people are too afraid to have a conversation and talk, especially with an audience as great as we have here, because you guys are awesome and I love it so much. Becky Hack says Wilson is being managed now. O'Ban says, I heard Royce killed it at the Forum. Listen, say what you will about Royce White. That guy is always willing to come on this show. I like that. I like Royce very much. You want to talk about as Mike was saying, like how you present yourself and like taking shots. I think Royce takes a lot of necessary shots. Some is damn entertaining, but the guy is willing to talk to anyone. That's great. 2 A says that's so true. Okay. All right. I'm going to go to the post show. If you guys are not a premium insider, I'm going to talk about some corruption in CD7, Congressional District 7. You guys aren't going to want to miss this story. We're going to probably actually do this as a full show. So stick around. We're going to be live in 30 seconds with our post show. For everyone else, we'll be back next Tuesday with Billy Nord. Should be at 1 o'clock.